Hey, have you wondered how the law of attraction really works? How to develop a basic understanding so that you'll be sure to develop habits that make the law of attraction work for you naturally. I'm Paul McKinley, and I'm here to help you realize your better life by teaching you about this little thing called the law of attraction. Today's topic, law of attraction from a physical and spiritual perspective. Now remember, whatever you put energy into gets bigger. That's the law of attraction. Whatever you put energy into gets bigger. So there's two levels to the law of attraction. One of them is the physical level, and the other one is the spiritual level. So on the physical level, if you're working hard at something, then you're putting lots of energy into it, and you will create things that way. That's kind of the hard way of doing it, but that works. If you want to manifest $1 million, but you're sitting on the couch watching movies all the time, that's probably not going to do much for manifesting $1 million. You have to do something to put yourself into a vibration that matches that $1 million. You have to do what it takes to create your own mental image of what it means to have the $1 million. Because if you don't have a concept of having $1 million, it's not going to come to you. You don't have a matching vibration to that, so that's not going to work. So there's the physical part of it. Another example is, let's say you wake up in the morning and you got up on the wrong side of the bed, as they say, and you're grumpy with your significant other. That's something that's physical that you're doing. Well, what's going to happen with your uh, significant other? They're going to be grumpy back at you, probably, aren't they? They're not going to say, "Oh, Harry, sorry, honey, you clearly got up on this wrong side of the bed, so maybe I'll just go into the next room and let you sort it out on your own, or I'll go visit one of my friends or do something, and get out of your way." That's not usually the way they do that. When you come at somebody, when you're being unpleasant with someone, generally speaking, they're going to reflect back to you the way that you're behaving. So if I've heard the saying, if you want your spouse to be an angel, you got to create heaven for them to live in. They're not going to live in the other place. So, not that there is another place, but still, you have to create an environment where they can be that angel for you. That's strictly on the physical level. Okay. Now, there's also the spiritual level, and there's some good things to understand about how spirit works, how spirit understands things, and so forth. So, first of all, the laws of physics don't apply to the spiritual realm. You may have heard the line from Star Trek where Scotty says, "We cannot change the laws of physics." Well, maybe on a physical level, but on a spiritual level, the laws of physics don't apply. Space and time doesn't apply. So, from a spiritual perspective, here is no different than there. Earth is no different than the other side of the universe. So, space has no meaning in spirit. Time has no meaning in spirit. You may have heard the biblical expression, a second is to God, a second is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is as a second. So time has no meaning in spirit. Now is just the same as 10 minutes ago, is the same as 10 years ago, is the same as 100 years from now. It's all the same in spirit. There's no real distinction of it. So you might think, well, in order for me to manifest, this has to happen first, and then this can happen. Well, it doesn't work that way. If this needs to happen first, then what spirit does is go back and make that happen in a time period so that it will pop out when you need that. Here's a good example of that. A number of years ago, my wife, Ann, was worrying about money. She did a lot of that back then before she really got into the understanding the law of attraction thing. So she did have this concept of talking to her spirit guides, her guides that are in the spiritual realm and not in the physical realm. So she had this little discussion with her spirit guides and said, I've got these bills, and I need the money to pay these bills with. Now, it so happens that the number that she needed was about $4,000. So she says, I need money for this. And lo and behold, the check shows up in the mail. A day or two later, it was pretty quick, for like $120. It was a credit card company had overcharged us for something. I don't remember what it was. Seems like I was traveling out of the country, and so they had charged us too much for the exchange rate between countries, and so they had to refund us some of that money, $120 or so, something like that. And so she's like, thank you for the money. I really appreciate it. Being grateful for it is gratefulness is important. And she goes and says, I appreciate the money, but I need more money than that. And a day or two later, lo and behold, another check shows up from the same credit card company, this time for like $180. So $120 plus $180 is about $300. Okay? And, here's another check out of the blue. Who'd have thought that the money would show up from a credit card company for something that we've been overcharged? We had no clue that had happened. So, but that wasn't enough to pay that $4,000 worth of bills that were due. So he goes back and says, thank you for this money. This is very much appreciated. The $300 will help, but I need thousands. Now, at this point, she's really kind of focusing more in on what it was that she really needed. I don't know even at that point if she had articulated it. Maybe it would have been better if she had the first time said, I need $4,000 to pay bills. So this last time it's like, I need thousands of dollars. But she's thinking that $400. A couple or 3 days later, she's looking in the newspaper. We lived in Texas at the time, and in Texas, it may be the same in other states as well, I don't know. But if the state was holding money for an individual, they would print out the list of names in the newspaper, and then you had to call them and find out what it was. So, if you had some money in a bank account or something, and you moved away and the bank can't get a hold of you, then it goes to the state, and the state tries to find you and get that money back to you. And then, if you see your name in the newspaper, you call them up and identify yourself, and then you get that money. Well, a couple or 3 days after Ann had said this, I need thousands, my name shows up in the newspaper. She's looking at the newspaper, happens to see this list of names, and just out of curiosity looks, and sure enough, my name's on the list. So we call up and find out what it was. It turned out that there had been a real estate transaction 10 years before that there had been an error of $3,700. Now, mind you, the $3,700 plus the $300 equals $4,000. So between the first two checks and this last thing, it was the amount that she needed. So there had been this error of about $3,700 in our favor. Well, it was from a real estate transaction that had happened 10 years before. Now, if you've never done a real estate transaction, there's, generally speaking, if you go through a title company, they will produce this, what's called a HUD statement. So on the left side of the HUD statement is the seller's side, and it's all the, you got to pay for this, and you get money for that, and you pay for this, and you get money for this, all this pluses and minuses, and basically all this stuff totals up, and that's what the seller walked away from, walked away from the deal with, is whatever that total is. Now on the buyer side is the same thing. They may have, depending on who's agreed to pay for what, the buyer may have a survey to pay for, they may have title insurance to pay for, they may have loan fees to pay for. Uh, so they may have put the money down, or they're all the different things that go into that transaction. It all totals up into the last little bit that the buyer has to bring to the table to close this transaction. So the buyer brings X amount, the seller walks away with X amount. Now, usually with most transactions like this, not always, but usually, the seller is a husband and wife. It's two people. And the seller has the real estate agent. So there's yet another person. The buyer is generally two people, a husband and wife, and they have a real estate agent separate from the real estate agent that the seller is. That keeps the real estate agent on the level if there's one for the buyer and the seller. Now, the ones that come up with this HUD statement is the title company. So somebody has to fill out all the stuff in this form, and then I expect that they would have somebody else check all of their numbers. So there's two people at the title company, two realtors, two buyers and two sellers, this whole room full of people that, we're talking thousands and thousands of dollars. So all of these people are going through this HUD statement with a fine-tooth comb, trying to make sure that everything is correct. All the numbers work out. So it's not just one person filled out this form and, there it goes. There's a whole room full of people that have checked it. And despite this whole room full of people that have checked this, an error in the amount of $3,700 had been made on this HUD statement. Well, I don't know why the title company didn't have the ability to get a hold of us at that point, because certainly they should have found the error shortly after we made that transaction. But still, they couldn't get a hold of us. It went to the state, and 10 years later, we get notice of it. But that 10 years later is within a few days of when my wife had said to her spirit guide, I need thousands of dollars. $3,700 plus the $120 plus the $180 equals the $4,000 that she needed. So that's why I say space and time has no meaning in spirit. So you think, okay, I need this money. Where's it going to come from? It's not up to me to decide where this money is going to come from, because I'm going to think of it in physical terms. But spirit doesn't work in physical terms. Sometimes it does, yes. And sometimes spirit works in the way that spirit works. So what happened was, okay, we need the money today, so we're going to go back 10 years ago and make this little tweak to a HUD document that results in a $3,700 error, which will then be in the background. Nobody knows about it until finally, at the right time, it pops out, and there it is where you need it. So there's no constraints over it. I've heard the expression that which is more difficult to manifest, $1 million or a cup of coffee? From a physical standpoint, what we're used to thinking about, you think, well, the cup of coffee is easier to manifest. It only costs a few cents. From a spiritual perspective, the $1 million and the cup of coffee are the same thing. There's no difference in the difficulty of producing one or the other of them. This concept of, money is difficult to create, not in a spiritual realm. So, it's only our perception of it being difficult because we're looking at it from a physical standpoint that makes it seem to be impossible. There's a biblical passage, with man this is impossible, but with God all things are possible. With spirit, there are only possibilities. Now, another interesting thing about the spiritual perspective is that spirit has no concept of not. Spirit has no concept of not, of negation, of the absence of something. Spirit only has a concept of possibilities. Oh, we can, this can happen or this can happen. It doesn't have a concept of, no, that can happen, because in spirit, anything can happen. That's why I named my business the Super Possibilities, because we live in this, this cauldron of possibilities that are just moving and boiling all around us, and all we have to do is reach out and grab that possibility, and make it happen through our own direction of our uh, thoughts, feelings, words, and deeds. So as we put energy into these things and we bring them to pass out of this soup of possibilities, so spirit has no concept of not. Now, the a thing that really trips us up a lot is our own language. You know, our ability to think is very closely tied to the language that we use. And one thing that we do a lot is we'll say, don't forget. You hear that a lot. Don't forget. Well, where's the energy in that? If you understand that spirit has no concept of not, then you think about don't forget, which is don't is a contraction, so it's do not forget. And from a spiritual perspective, spirit here is do forget, do forget. So where's the energy? It's on the forget part. It's not on the remember part. What you really want is to remember. So why are we saying forget when what we mean is remember? And that's why I say put your energy into the things that you want and let everything else starve. If forgetting is something that you want, then talk about forgetting. If remembering is what you want, then talk about remembering. I would say you probably don't really want to forget things. There may be some things in your life that you didn't enjoy much, but there's a blessing in everything. And if you forget those things, then you also lose the blessing that came from it. So think about the language that you're using. What is it that you're really saying? Where is the energy in the language that you're using? Now, finally, spirit has no concept of good and bad. It's all creation. It's all, from a spiritual perspective, it's all good. So if what you're doing is you're putting energy into something that you think is bad, that's what gets created. Spirit doesn't care what it is that you're creating. I mean, I think spirit does care, but it's not like, oh, well, that's bad. So, you're saying that you want that through your thoughts, feelings, actions, and words, but that's really bad. So you really don't want that. So we're not going to manifest that for you. No, it doesn't work that way. Whatever it is that you're working on creating, whether you intend to or not, whether you want that or not, whether you're going to enjoy that or not, whatever it is that you're putting energy into, that's what you're creating. So, and from a spiritual perspective, it's all good. It's all good. You may not enjoy it much, but it's still good from a spiritual perspective. So, you can't think of it as being, well, I'm gonna expect that spirit is going to make sure that the things that I create and manifest are something that I'm going to interpret as being good. It doesn't work that way. Spirit has no judgment in it whatsoever. It's whatever you want to create, great, knock yourself out. If this is what you want to create, your wish is my command. And so that's what gets created, whether or not you're going to enjoy it. There was something else I was going to say along that line, and I've forgotten what it was now. I hate it when that happens. So now my last point was to give you some examples of those. I think I've already given you some pretty good examples of all of this. The main thing here is think about what it is. Be careful what it is that you're thinking, feeling, saying, or doing, because those things are manifesting. So become aware of what it is that you're doing, what it is that you're thinking, feeling, saying, or doing, so that you can then realize that, when I'm being fussy about something, I'm really creating more of what I don't like. Let's say there's some politician you don't like. There's a lot of that going on these days. The more energy you put into hating that politician, you're probably putting energy into that particular politician. But even if not, you're putting energy into creating more politicians that are just like that one, or that have some of the same issues that one does. So, rather than putting your energy into the politicians you don't like, put your energy into the politicians that you do like. put your energy into the things that are good that are going on and make more of that rather than the things that you don't like. Be aware of where your thoughts are going. Be aware of what you're thinking, feeling, saying, or doing. You've heard the expression, be careful what you pray for. Everything you think, feel, say, or do is a prayer. Everything you think, feel, say, or do is a prayer. And prayers become manifested. That's the way the law of attraction works. So I think that's enough for today. Had to do this video over again because the first time I did it, it didn't have any volume. I'm looking at the VU meter here, and it looks like there's volume for it now, so I'll have to go back and delete the old YouTube and substitute this one in, and we'll see how that works. So that's all for next time. We'll have another interesting subject for the next